Have you ever wondered what's worse than an open enemy? It's the man sleeping in your mom's bed, turning every morning into hell. I'm Jamal, 15, living 3 years on 3 hours of sleep a night, woken at 4 a.m. by my stepdad Richard's blinding flashlight and racist slurs I won't repeat. Lazy punk, he yells while his own sons, Ethan and Logan, snooze till 8 a.m. in cozy rooms just steps away. Every day I'm forced to scrub floors, clean the garage, and cook breakfast for the whole house. Richard's taunts echoing in my head. Spill a drop of water. He bans me from eating or drinking all day. My mom, Sarah, a night shift nurse, is never around when this happens, and Richard knows it. He calls it character building. I call it torture. 3 years as a shadow, I've started seeing shapes move in the corner of my eye, hearing my name whispered with no one there. My grades tanked from A's to F's. Friends call me raccoon for the bags under my eyes, and teachers think I'm on drugs. The worst moment, collapsing mid-history presentation, face-planting the whiteboard in front of the class. Richard showed up at school wearing his veteran's cap, playing the concerned dad. "I've tried my best," he told the school nurse, "but the kid's got no drive." I knew I had to do something before he ruined my life completely. And if you've ever felt trapped in a nightmare no one believes, this story's for you. I'm Jamal, and this is the story of the years I spent in a house that should have been a home but felt like a prison. We lived in a small town outside Atlanta, Georgia, where everyone knows each other, but not everyone sees what happens behind closed doors. My mom, Sarah, a night shift nurse, left home at sunset and returned long after I'd been dragged out of bed. My stepdad, Richard, a former Marine who ran a small but well-known construction company, had the look of an upstanding guy. Veteran's cap, firm handshake, always spinning tales about his time in Iraq to prove kids today are too soft. But behind that facade was a man who turned my life into hell. In our house, Richard's 2 sons, Ethan and Logan, 16-year-old blonde, blue-eyed twins, were pampered like princes. They slept from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. in rooms decked out with superhero posters and gaming consoles. Me, I got 3 hours of sleep, from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., no more, no less. Richard called it house rules, but the rules only applied to me, Mom's black stepson. He said I needed character building to become a man, that my ancestors worked all day in the heat, so I should tough it out. Those words weren't just discipline, they were knives to my self-respect. Every morning when Richard's alarm blared and his flashlight burned my eyes, I had to jump up to do chores, scrub the bathroom until the tiles gleamed, tidy the dusty garage, make breakfast with toast and eggs for everyone, all before sunrise. Spill a drop of water or make a sound. Richard punished me. No breakfast, no water, sometimes no going outside for a week. He called it consequences. I knew it was control. Mom, working 12-hour night shifts, was rarely home to see it. On the rare days she was, Richard played the devoted dad, ruffling my hair and saying, "Jamal's learning to stand on his own, right, son?" I'd nod, knowing if I spoke up, he'd find a way to punish me after Mom left for work. Richard had a mantra he repeated. In Iraq, we survived on 2 hours of sleep and still got the job done. Kids today can't handle a challenge. But his challenges weren't training. They were cruelty. He targeted me for my skin, for not being his blood, for being a reminder that Mom once had another husband, my dad, who died when I was young. Richard didn't just want to control me. He wanted to erase me from the family he'd built. For 3 years, I became a shadow of myself, living for the next blaring alarm. But one day, I decided I couldn't keep going like this. 3 years of 3 hours sleep a night turned me Jamal, into a ghost in my own life. In this small town outside Atlanta, I wasn't just fighting Richard, my stepdad, but my own crumbling body and mind. Every morning, his flashlight seared my eyes, his alarm blaring, and I felt myself fading. Shadows flickered in the corner of my vision, like someone was watching, but when I turned, there was only darkness. My name echoed in quiet moments, just whispers in my head. I wasn't crazy, but I was being pushed to the edge. At school, I used to be an A student, but now my report card bled with red Fs. I dozed off at my desk, in math, English, even during lunch. Once I woke up in the cafeteria, half a sandwich in hand, while my friends roared with laughter. They called me Raccoon for the dark circles under my eyes, a nickname I hated but couldn't fight. Teachers started eyeing me with suspicion. My chemistry teacher, Ms. Thompson, pulled me aside and asked point blank, "Jamal, are you on something? Drugs?" I shook my head, but my words carried no weight. She jotted something in my file, and I knew it was headed to the counselor. The counselor, Mr. Harris, called me in and asked about home. I wanted to spill everything, to scream that Richard was torturing me daily. But I was scared he'd call Richard in and he'd play the devoted dad, like he did when I collapsed in history class. That day, mid-presentation on the Civil War, my vision blurred, legs buckled, and I face-planted the whiteboard in front of everyone. My classmates' laughter cut like knives. Richard showed up, veteran's cap on, voice dripping with fake concern. "The kid lacks discipline. I've tried my best, but he won't listen." The school nurse nodded, and I just wanted to disappear. My mom, Sarah, was my only hope, but she was drained from 12-hour night shifts. The rare times I tried to tell her, Richard was there, cutting me off, laughing loud. "Jamal loves to exaggerate. Teenagers, right?" Mom gave a tired smile, never probing further. I saw she was scared of him, scared of losing the stability he provided, the house, the paid bills, the life she'd built after my dad died. I realized I was fighting alone, in a war no one else could see. But the worst wasn't the sleep deprivation or the taunts. It was the feeling of being erased. Richard didn't just want to control me. He wanted me gone from this family, like a stain to be scrubbed out. Each day, I felt smaller, a ghost no one noticed. Grades tanked, friends drifted, teachers suspected, and Mom was blind to my pain. I knew I had to do something, to find a way out, before I vanished completely. I, Jamal, had reached my breaking point. 3 years of Richard's 4 a.m. Torture, flashlight in my eyes, blaring alarm, and racist slurs made me feel less than human. In this Atlanta suburb, I knew silence would erase me, not just from the family, but from myself. I couldn't wait for Mom, Sarah, to wake up to the truth or rely on teachers and counselors swayed by Richard's troubled teen narrative. I needed someone truly on my side. Uncle Marcus, my dad's tough mechanic brother, living a few blocks away. I snuck my dad's old phone from Mom's drawer and found Marcus's number. Hands shaking, I texted, "Uncle, I need to see you 4 a.m. tomorrow when Richard starts his torture." He replied instantly, "You okay? I'll be there." Fear and excitement surged like I'd lit a fire without knowing what it'd burn. That night, I moved slowly at dinner, faking exhaustion, spilling my glass. Richard smirked, eyes gleaming. "Looks like someone needs extra motivation tomorrow," he said, voice dripping with menace. Ethan and Logan, my stepbrothers, chuckled, but I caught something in their eyes. Not glee, but unease. At 4 a.m., right on cue, my door flew open. Richard's flashlight blinded me, his alarm screeching through the room. "Get up, you lazy punk," he yelled, spitting a racist slur I'd heard 1,000 times. This time, he held a bucket of ice water, ready to douse me. He didn't know the front door had quietly opened. Uncle Marcus with my cousin Andre stormed in like a hurricane. "What'd you just call my nephew?" Marcus's voice was low, sharp as a blade. Richard flinched, the flashlight clattering to the floor, its beam dancing across his pale face. Andre, tall and unafraid, stepped in front of me. "Touch my cousin again, I dare you," he said, voice defiant. Richard stammered, "This is my house." "You're trespassing." But before he could go on, Ethan, one of the twins, stepped out from the hallway, phone in hand. "Actually, Dad," Ethan said, voice shaky but firm, "you should see this first." His phone lit up the dark, playing a video he and Logan had secretly recorded over 3 months. Richard's morning rants, insults and torture, the alarm's wail, every word crystal clear. Richard lunged for the phone, but Marcus blocked him, knocking the ice bucket to the floor. Water splashed across Richard's feet as he slipped, exposed and fumbling. In that moment, I felt a spark of hope. Those videos were proof. A weapon I'd never dared imagine, but I knew Richard wouldn't go down easily. He'd built a reputation as a respected veteran in this Atlanta community, and he'd fight to protect it. I looked at Marcus, then Ethan, and realized for the first time I wasn't alone. But this fight was just beginning. When the ice bucket crashed to the floor and Richard slipped in the room he once ruled, I, Jamal, felt time freeze. The flashlight rolled, its beam exposing his pale, shaken face, stripped of its fake confidence. Uncle Marcus stood like a wall, his voice low and sharp. "You thought you could torture my nephew and no one would know." My cousin Andre stayed in front of me, ready to throw down if Richard tried anything. But what made my heart pound wasn't just Marcus's presence. It was Ethan, my stepbrother, trembling with his phone, its screen glowing in the dark. "Dad, I recorded everything," Ethan said, voice cracking but resolute. 3 months, every morning, every word you said to Jamal. Logan and I couldn't take it anymore. The phone played, Richard's cold voice echoing, the blaring alarm, racist slurs, his shouts as I dragged myself from bed at 4 a.m. One clip showed him mocking me as I collapsed from exhaustion in the garage. Ethan scrolled through dozens of videos, each one a stab at the devoted dad image Richard built in this Atlanta suburb. Logan, usually quieter, stepped beside Ethan, gripping his brother's hand for strength. "We didn't want to hurt you," Logan said, eyes red, "but we couldn't let you keep doing this to Jamal." Richard panicked. He lunged for Ethan's phone, but Marcus shoved him back. The remaining ice water spilled again, soaking Richard's pajamas, making him look more pathetic than ever. "You're betraying me," he roared, voice breaking with rage. "I raised you, and you choose him over your own dad." He pointed at me, eyes wild. But in that moment, I saw something I'd never dared hope for. Ethan and Logan, who once laughed at me on Richard's orders, now stood with me. They chose truth over safety. Marcus clamped a hand on Richard's shoulder, stopping him cold. "You want to explain this to the cops, or should I handle it now?" he asked, voice like ice. Richard stammered, slipping into his familiar veteran's charm. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, suddenly smooth. "I was just teaching Jamal discipline. You don't get it. I do this for the family." But his words fell flat as the video played on, the alarm and insults ringing like a verdict. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like I had a chance to fight for the first time in 3 years. Those videos were proof. Light piercing the darkness Richard trapped me in. But I knew he wouldn't go down easy. He had this Atlanta community behind him, veteran buddies, construction contracts, and even Mom, who seemed to choose his stability over me. When Marcus turned to me, eyes fierce with resolve, I knew this battle was just starting. "Jamal," he said, "you're not alone anymore. We're ending this." And in that moment, a fire sparked inside me. Not anger, but hope. Standing in the room, soaked with ice water and flickering flashlight beams, I, Jamal, thought this moment would be the turning point. Ethan's phone, holding 3 months of Richard's torture, was the sharpest weapon I'd ever had. But in this Atlanta suburb, Richard wasn't an easy foe. He'd built a fortress of reputation, veteran, successful businessman, model dad in the community's eyes. Minutes after Uncle Marcus threatened to call the cops, I realized this fight wasn't just about truth, it was about power. The front door swung open again, and Mom, Sarah, stepped in, still in her nurse's scrubs, face haggard from her night shift. She took in the chaos. Richard drenched, Marcus and Andre facing off, Ethan and Logan clutching the phone like it held their conscience. "What's going on?" Mom asked, voice trembling. I wanted to run to her, spill everything, but Richard spoke first. "Sarah, you're back just in time," he said, voice suddenly calm, like an actor switching roles. "Jamal brought people into our house at 4 a.m. to attack me. I was just trying to teach him discipline, but he's turning against the family." His words cut like a blade. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked, weak from years of sleeplessness. "Mom, he's lying. He tortures me every day." I pointed to Ethan's phone. "It's all there, Mom, look." But Mom just stood there, eyes flickering between me and Richard. Then she whispered, "Jamal, you always exaggerate. Richard just wants what's best for you." My heart shattered. Mom, my only hope for protection, chose his side. I saw fear in her eyes, fear of losing the house, the stability, the life Richard provided. Within 10 minutes, red and blue police lights flashed outside. Someone, probably the nosy neighbor with the doorbell camera, had reported a disturbance. The officer, Tom Carter, a buddy of Richard's from the veterans group, stepped in. "Richard, you okay?" Carter asked, eyeing Marcus and Andre with suspicion. Richard slipped into victim mode. "Tom, thanks for coming," he said, voice choked. "This kid, Jamal, has behavioral issues. I suspect drugs, and now he's brought strangers into our house to cause trouble." He pointed at me, and Carter's gaze hardened, like he'd already bought the story. I tried to explain, but my words came out jumbled, my head spinning from exhaustion. "No, he tortures me. He doesn't let me sleep." But Carter just looked at me, then back to Richard. "We'll need statements from everyone," he said, his tone already picking a side. Ethan raised his phone, trying to show Carter the videos, but Richard cut in. "Those are just edited clips. Kids these days are good at that stuff," he said with a friendly smile. Carter nodded, like it was all too familiar. The community split. Word of the family drama spread fast through the PTA group chat and neighborhood social media. Some, especially Richard's veteran friends, defended him, calling me a troubled kid trying to ruin a devoted dad. Others, like my English teacher, started asking questions, but they were quickly drowned out by Richard's supporters. I realized our evidence, though damning, wasn't enough to crack the wall of reputation he'd built. Richard shot me a cold smile as if to say, "You haven't beaten me yet." And I knew if I wanted justice, I'd have to fight harder than ever. Richard's cold smile as Officer Tom Carter left made me, Jamal, feel cornered. He knew he still held the upper hand with his veteran status and the Atlanta suburbs support, but I couldn't let it end there. Ethan's videos capturing 3 months of Richard's torture were my only light in 3 years of darkness, and I knew I had to dig deeper to expose his true self. I needed evidence, not just to prove he tormented me, but to show the town he wasn't the hero they thought. Uncle Marcus and I sat in his small apartment, a few blocks from my house. Andre, my cousin, brought his laptop and a determined glint in his eye. "Jamal, I know Richard's hiding something," Andre said, fingers flying over the keyboard. Richard had bragged about controlling everything in his construction business, so Andre tried hacking his work email. After tense hours, we found a hidden cloud folder labeled innocently, Management Research. But when we opened it, I nearly stopped breathing. It wasn't business files. It was articles, military documents, and detailed notes on sleep deprivation techniques, ways to break someone's spirit without physical marks. One of Richard's handwritten notes read, "Apply to J, 3 hours optimal to crush will." It hit me like a punch to the chest. Richard wasn't just randomly tormenting me. He'd planned it, researched it, executed it like a military campaign. But that wasn't all. Andre dug deeper and found old emails between Richard and a lawyer from 10 years ago, tied to a CPS investigation from his first marriage. His eldest son from that wife had reported being forced awake at 3 a.m. for discipline training, but the case was buried when Richard's veteran buddies pressured the agency. The CPS report stated, "Insufficient concrete evidence, case closed." History was repeating, and I was the next victim. I trembled reading those lines. Richard wasn't just an abuser. He was a calculated manipulator who knew how to cover his tracks. I looked at Marcus, his fists clenched. "He thinks he can keep doing this," Marcus said, voice low with fury. "But we've got this, Jamal. We can take him down." Andre downloaded everything to a USB drive, and we planned to bring it to light. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Richard had friends everywhere, cops, veterans groups, the PTA. Those emails and CPS documents were weapons, but I needed a stage for them to hit hard. Meanwhile, rumors spread fast in the Atlanta community. Some started whispering about Richard, thanks to my English teacher, Ms. Harper, who shared her doubts with a few parents. But Richard's supporters hit back harder. A post on the neighborhood Facebook group, written by one of his friends, called me a disgruntled kid trying to ruin an honorable veteran. It got hundreds of likes, and I felt the town turning against me. But holding that USB drive, I knew I couldn't stop. Richard had hidden his past too long, and now it was time for the truth to explode. The USB in my hand, Jamal's, was a ticking bomb, holding the truth about Richard, his sleep deprivation torture notes, and past CPS investigation. But in this Atlanta suburb, truth didn't win automatically. Richard had built an empire of reputation, and he'd do anything to protect it. Uncle Marcus, Andre, and I prepared for an emergency court hearing to bring our evidence to light. Stepping into the courtroom, the air felt heavy, like a storm brewing. Richard sat there, veteran's cap on, eyes feigning sorrow, flanked by his lawyer, the same one who got him off the old CPS case. The hearing began, and Ethan, my stepbrother, took the stand first. His voice shook as he read from his journal. "I hated myself for laughing when Dad called Jamal those disgusting names. He said we'd lose our Xbox, our allowance, everything if we didn't." He paused, eyes red, and the courtroom went silent. Logan followed, voice quiet but steady, describing nights hearing Richard's alarm, my pleas for sleep, and the guilt crushing him. "Dad made us think it was normal," Logan said, "but we knew it was wrong." The turning point came when Ms. Harper, my English teacher and former soldier, testified. She recognized Richard's sleep deprivation tactics from military interrogation training. "This isn't discipline," she said, voice sharp. "This is deliberate, used on a 15-year-old. I've seen these techniques in the Army meant to break an enemy's spirit." Her words landed like a punch, shaking Richard's devoted dad image. His face paled, hands clenched, but he quickly composed himself. Ready to counter, Richard's lawyer stood, smooth as oil. He called Richard to the stand, and the performance began. Richard cried, shoulders shaking, spinning tales of Iraq and PTSD that made him too strict, but only to help Jamal become a man. And he looked at the judge, voice breaking. I tried to replace the father Jamal lost, but he fought me every step. Some in the courtroom, including his veteran friends, wiped tears. He knew how to manipulate emotions, and I felt our truth fading under his act. I glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragement. We presented the USB, torture notes, and the old CPS file. The judge reviewed them, eyebrows furrowing at Richard's handwritten note. 3 hours optimal to crush Will. But Richard's lawyer struck back. These documents lack context, he said. They could be personal research, not proof of specific actions. The old CPS case was closed for lack of evidence. The floor felt like it was crumbling beneath me. Our evidence, our hope, suddenly seemed fragile in a system reluctant to trust kids. Then Ethan stood again, unprompted, unstoppable. Your Honor, he shouted, my dad forced us to call Jamal horrible names. He's not PTSD, he just wants control. The courtroom held its breath. Richard glared at Ethan, eyes burning, but Ethan didn't back down. In that moment, I knew we'd cracked Richard's wall, even just a bit. But would it be enough to change everything? I clenched my fists, awaiting the verdict, knowing this fight was far from over. Ethan's outburst, his voice cracking as he accused Richard of forcing him and Logan to demean me, Jamal, echoed like thunder in the courtroom. The judge's face tightened, and for a moment, I thought we'd pierced Richard's polished facade. The evidence was damning. Ethan and Logan's videos, the USB with Richard's sleep deprivation notes, and the old CPS report exposing his past. But in this Atlanta suburb where Richard's war hero and businessman status loomed, truth felt fragile. As the room settled, my stomach knotted, sensing worse was coming. Mom, Sarah, took the stand, moving slowly in her nurse's scrubs, eyes avoiding mine. I wanted to believe she'd finally see Richard's monstrosity, stand up for me after years of silence, but her voice was soft, robotic. I thought Richard was helping Jamal, she said, hands twisting. He said early wake-ups were discipline to build character. I trusted him. Her words hit like a fist. I wanted to scream, ask how she could trust a man who slung slurs and starved me of sleep. Then the lawyer handed her a notebook, her work journal filled with years of medical notes. The judge flipped through it, and my heart sank as Sarah spoke, voice barely audible. I documented Jamal's symptoms, fatigue, confusion, micro-sleep episodes. I thought it was school stress, maybe grief over his father. The lawyer read aloud, unraveling the truth. Her notes weren't just observations. They were clinical, tracking my decline with chilling precision. Patient shows cognitive decline, consistent with chronic sleep deprivation. No physical marks noted. She'd known what Richard was doing. She'd used her nursing skills to monitor my suffering, not to save me, but to shield herself legally, keeping Richard's abuse just shy of CPS intervention. The courtroom closed in. My mother, my last hope, chose the house, financial stability, and Richard's lies over me. Why didn't you stop him? I whispered, voice breaking, unheard. Sarah's eyes met mine for a second, then fled, brimming with guilt and fear. Richard's lawyer pounced, painting her as a worried mom overwhelmed by a troubled teen. Ms. Sarah's notes show a mother trying to understand her son's struggles, he said smoothly. She trusted her husband's methods, as any spouse would. The judge's face was unreadable, but I felt the tide turning. Richard leaned back, a smirk flickering, knowing Sarah's betrayal gave him another shield. Ethan and Logan sat frozen, faces pale, realizing their testimony might not sway a system favoring Richard's narrative. Marcus gripped my shoulder, voice low. "We're not done, Jamal. We keep fighting." But Mom's betrayal crushed me. She'd seen me hallucinate, collapse, lose myself, yet chose to document my pain instead of saving me. I felt like I was drowning in that Atlanta courtroom, surrounded yet alone. As the judge called a recess, I clutched the USB, my anchor to the truth. Richard's past, research, and cruelty were there, but the real battle was clear, convincing a world that wanted heroes, not monsters. Outside, Richard's allies spread tales of a misguided teen attacking a veteran. I knew the next fight would be tougher, but I couldn't let Mom's betrayal or Richard's lies bury me. Ethan's outburst, his voice cracking as he accused Richard of forcing him and Logan to demean me, Jamal, echoed like thunder in the courtroom. The judge's face tightened, and for a moment, I thought we'd pierced Richard's polished facade. The evidence was damning. Ethan and Logan's videos, the USB with Richard's sleep deprivation notes, and the old CPS report exposing his past. But in this Atlanta suburb, where Richard's war hero and businessman status loomed, truth felt fragile. As the room settled, my stomach knotted, sensing worse was coming. Mom, Sarah, took the stand, moving slowly in her nurse's scrubs, eyes avoiding mine. I wanted to believe she'd finally see Richard's monstrosity, stand up for me after years of silence. But her voice was soft, robotic. "I thought Richard was helping Jamal," she said, hands twisting. "He said early wake-ups were discipline, to build character. I trusted him." Her words hit like a fist. I wanted to scream, ask how she could trust a man who slung slurs and starved me of sleep. Then the lawyer handed her a notebook, her work journal filled with years of medical notes. The judge flipped through it, and my heart sank as Sarah spoke, voice barely audible. I documented Jamal's symptoms: fatigue, confusion, micro-sleep episodes. I thought it was school stress, maybe grief over his father. But the lawyer read aloud, unraveling the truth. Her notes weren't just observations. They were clinical, tracking my decline with chilling precision. Patient shows cognitive decline, consistent with chronic sleep deprivation. No physical marks noted. She'd known what Richard was doing. She'd used her nursing skills to monitor my suffering, not to save me, but to shield herself legally, keeping Richard's abuse just shy of CPS intervention. The courtroom closed in. My mother, my last hope, chose the house, financial stability, and Richard's lies over me. "Why didn't you stop him?" I whispered, voice breaking, unheard. Sarah's eyes met mine for a second, then fled, brimming with guilt and fear. Richard's lawyer pounced, painting her as a worried mom, overwhelmed by a troubled teen. Ms. Sarah's notes show a mother trying to understand her son's struggles, he said smoothly. She trusted her husband's methods, as any spouse would. The judge's face was unreadable, but I felt the tide turning. Richard leaned back, a smirk flickering, knowing Sarah's betrayal gave him another shield. Ethan and Logan sat frozen, faces pale, realizing their testimony might not sway a system favoring Richard's narrative. Marcus gripped my shoulder, voice low. "We're not done, Jamal. We keep fighting." But Mom's betrayal crushed me. She'd seen me hallucinate, collapse, lose myself, yet chose to document my pain instead of saving me. I felt like I was drowning in that Atlanta courtroom, surrounded yet alone. As the judge called a recess, I clutched the USB, my anchor to the truth. Richard's past, research, and cruelty were there, but the real battle was clear, convincing a world that wanted heroes, not monsters. Outside, Richard's allies spread tales of a misguided teen attacking a veteran. I knew the next fight would be tougher, but I couldn't let Mom's betrayal or Richard's lies bury me. The courtroom in our Atlanta suburb felt like a pressure cooker after my mother's betrayal laid bare her complicity in Richard's abuse. I, Jamal, sat clutching the USB drive, its weight a reminder of the truth we'd fought to expose. Richard's calculated sleep deprivation tactics, his past CPS investigation, and the videos from Ethan and Logan capturing his cruelty. But as the judge returned from recess, her face unreadable, I braced for what was coming. Richard sat confidently, his veteran's cap tilted just so, surrounded by supporters from the local VFW who filled the gallery like a loyal army. Chu Marcus squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "Whatever happens, we've shown who he really is." But I wasn't so sure the system would agree. The judge began, her voice measured. The evidence presented, including video footage and documented research, indicates inappropriate disciplinary methods by Mr. Richard. My heart lifted for a moment, but then she continued, "However, it does not meet the threshold for criminal abuse under state law." The words hit like a sledgehammer. She acknowledged Richard's excessive wake-up routines, but framed them as misguided parenting, not torture. Richard was ordered to attend mandatory parenting classes and therapy, a slap on the wrist for 3 years of breaking me down. Ethan and Logan, at 16, were granted the right to choose their primary residence, and they quietly opted to live with their maternal grandmother, escaping Richard's control. For me, the judge granted Chu Marcus full guardianship, recognizing that returning to Richard's house would be detrimental to Jamal's well-being. It was a victory, but a hollow one. As we left the courtroom, Richard approached with his lawyer, extending a hand I refused to shake. "Let's move forward, son," he said, his voice dripping with fake remorse. His supporters clapped him on the back, praising his resilience against a troubled teen's accusations. The community split like a fault line. On the neighborhood Facebook group, posts praising Richard as a veteran wronged by a rebellious kid racked up likes, while others, sparked by co-Harper's quiet advocacy, questioned his role in youth programs. The community center board, dependent on Richard's construction contracts, voted to keep his sponsorships but required supervision for his involvement with kids, a compromise that protected no one but their budget. Driving back to Chu Marcus's apartment, I felt the weight of the verdict. I was free from Richard's house, but the system had let him walk with barely a scratch. My grades were still in tatters, my mind scarred from years of sleep deprivation, and my mother's betrayal cut deeper than anything Richard had done. The town's division mirrored my own heart. Part of me wanted to scream, to make everyone see the monster he was, but another part just wanted to heal, to sleep without fear of a flashlight at 4 a.m. Ethan and Logan's choice to leave gave me hope. They'd seen the truth and chosen to stand with me, even if it cost them their father's approval. But Richard's smug face as he left the courthouse told me he'd spin this as a win and many would believe him. The USB drive still sat in my pocket, a reminder that we'd exposed his lies, even if the law didn't fully punish him. Chu Marcus turned to me as we pulled up to his place. "You're stronger than he ever will be, Jamal," he said. "And we're not done fighting." I nodded, but the fight felt different now. Not for justice, but for my own survival. For rebuilding a life where I could define myself beyond Richard's cruelty. Leaving the Atlanta courtroom with Chu Marcus's hand on my shoulder, I, Jamal, felt like I'd won a battle but lost a war. The judge's ruling had freed me from Richard's house, placing me under Chu Marcus's guardianship, and Ethan and Logan had chosen to live with their grandmother, escaping their father's control. But the hollow victory stung. Richard walked away with just parenting classes and therapy, his reputation barely dented in the eyes of his supporters. My mother, Sarah, had betrayed me, her clinical notes exposing how she documented my suffering to protect herself, not me. The community remained split, with some still cheering Richard as a wronged veteran, while others whispered doubts. I carried the scars of 3 years of sleep deprivation, micro-sleep episodes, cognitive fog, and a brain that doctors said might never fully recover. Yet as I settled into Chu Marcus's small apartment, I began to see a path forward, not through justice, but through survival. Living with Chu Marcus was like learning to breathe again. His home wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom place filled with the smell of engine oil and coffee, but it was safe. For the first time in years, I woke up to sunlight, not a flashlight in my face. No air horns, no racial slurs, just the quiet hum of a normal morning. Chu Marcus would sit with me over breakfast, talking about my dad, his brother, and how he'd be proud of me for standing up. Those moments rebuilt something in me that Richard had tried to destroy. I started therapy, not the court-mandated kind Richard faked, but real sessions to help me cope with the permanent damage, slower processing, sudden naps, and nightmares of 4 a.m. wake-ups. The therapist said healing wasn't about erasing the scars, but learning to live with them. And I clung to that idea like a lifeline. The biggest lesson I learned was this: recognize abuse early, trust your instincts, and find people who will fight for you. Richard's power came from my silence, from my mother's fear, from a community too quick to believe a polished lie. If I'd spoken up sooner, if I'd trusted Chu Marcus from the start, maybe I could have avoided some of the damage. But silence is a trap, and I want you to hear this. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Speak up, even when it's hard, even when the world seems to be against you. Find your Chu Marcus, your Ethan and Logan, people who see you, not the story someone else tells about you, and never let someone's title, like veteran or parent, blind you to their actions. I also learned that healing is quiet, messy, and slow. There were days I'd wake up gasping, thinking Richard was at my door, but each night I slept through without fear was a small victory. Each morning I chose to keep going was a rebellion against the man who tried to break me. I started tutoring kids at the community center, sharing my story in bits and pieces, hoping to help others spot the signs of abuse before it's too late. My grades are climbing again, slowly, and I'm learning to work around my brain's new limits. It's not the life I planned, but it's mine, and I'm building it on my terms. Rebuilding my life with Chu Marcus in that small Atlanta apartment showed me, Jamal, that survival is a quiet kind of rebellion. The courtroom didn't give me justice. Richard walked away with a slap on the wrist, and my mother's betrayal still stings like an open wound. But every morning I wake up without a flashlight in my face. Every night I sleep past 4 a.m. I'm taking back what he stole from me. The scars are still there. My brain's slower, my dreams are haunted. But I'm here, standing, and that's a victory Richard can't touch. Ethan and Logan, now living with their grandmother, are finding their own paths, carrying their own invisible wounds from watching my abuse. We're not whole, but we're healing. Together, apart. This story isn't just mine, it's for anyone who's felt trapped, unseen, or silenced by someone who should have protected them. If you're listening and something in your life feels wrong, maybe a parent, a teacher, or someone with power over you is crossing lines, don't stay quiet. Speak up. Find your people, the ones who'll believe you, who'll fight for you. I learned the hard way that silence lets abusers win. If I'd reached out to Chu Marcus sooner, If I'd trusted Ethan and Logan's quiet support earlier, maybe I'd have fewer scars. But it's not too late for you. Look for the signs. Exhaustion that isn't normal. Fear that lingers. Rules that only apply to you. Those aren't accidents. They're red flags. I'm sharing this because I want you to act. If you see a kid struggling, ask questions. If you're a teacher, a neighbor, a friend, don't look away. My story could have ended differently if just one person had pushed past Richard's lies. Share this video, not for me, but for the next kid who needs someone to notice. Comment below if you've seen these signs, if you've been through something similar, or if you want to help change things. Let's make sure no one else has to fight alone in the dark. Together, we can make communities like ours in Atlanta safer, places where kids can sleep without fear, where truth matters more than titles. Hit that like button, share this story, and let's be the ones who speak up. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find peace tonight.